I'll just be transparent in the beginning. I think this is guaranteed to happen, as close to a guarantee as possible. And that is the topic of universal basic income, or UBI. Universal basic income is a proposed system where all adult citizens receive regular, unconditional government payments intended to meet basic living needs, independent of employment or income status. So, like, regardless of what your job is, whatever, you'd get access to this. When considering UBI, several main areas deserve attention: its core principles, rationale, potential benefits, challenges, and real world experimentation. Okay, so where do we start here? Because this is a massive topic with which connects with AI, blockchain, all this stuff. So where do you think's best to start?
Yeah. I think the number one thing to really get a grip on is like why people have been proposing for this. Cause technically, like we're hearing about it now, but it's been around for quite some time.
Yes,
So through history, there's been different reasons that have been proposed for why some sort of universal basic income could be necessary or helpful. And I can go into some of the like ideas around why.
totally. Yeah, may as well, because when people hear that concept, it's so foreign to us, right? Like that's like this is going to break the whole thing, and it's actually been tried places. They've done little experiments. So yeah, take over and teach us some stuff.
So, some of the ideas around UBI is to reduce poverty and economic inequality by giving everyone a sort of safety net. UBI would streamline social security systems, right, by essentially just having that be standard for everyone instead of having to have people apply for this and that or whatever and figure out if they're denied or not, or if they're actually qualified, reduce some of the bureaucracy around a lot of that, and even some of the administrative costs compared to your traditional welfare programs where you do have to go and do all of those things in such a process. It's like, well,
Hmm.
like just give everyone a baseline. And like that way, if there's issues, like they've got their piece, right? Like just let it be. Also, like this prevents there from being errors that could occur and people being excluded from programs for whatever reason that may not seem fair. Everyone would get the benefit, so no one is left out due to some complex eligibility criteria.
Hmm.
So there's a few different reasons or philosophies around why UBI could be important. One of them is a moral one, which is that everyone deserves some sort of a share of the collective wealth that is being created by society. The second is an economic philosophy, meaning that a stable income floor would boost consumption and innovation. If everyone has money, then everyone can spend, right? And that should spread the economy. Now, the ones that we're seeing more recently here are technological sorts of reasons, meaning that automation is going to reduce job availability and UBI will ensure continued participation in the economy, right? If people lose their jobs, how are they going to spend money? Okay, well, this is how they'll continue to have money to spend and take care of themselves. Another thing is a political thing, right? So just reducing all of the bureaucracy and welfare dependencies by just simplifying the redistribution of wealth throughout the entire economy. So hopefully that paints a little bit of a picture of like some of the major reasons that people believe in the need for UBI.
Totally. No, that was a fantastic introduction. And there's a few things to consider in terms of like how long this has been around. As Keith mentioned, there's been discussions about this for a very long time, but where it became very prevalent was when a guy named Andrew Yang ran for the presidency in the States, and his major calling card for running was universal basic income. And so I'd strongly recommend going to listen to his episode with Joe Rogan that he did when he was running. So that would have been like 5+ years ago, maybe, or 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even longer. And a lot of the stuff that he predicted is coming true with the evolution of technology, how that's impacting the workforce and all that stuff. So definitely go watch that. He's one of the core figures. And the moral piece is what I really wanted to touch. That so when you create this, you're eliminating the you're raising the floor ideally a lot, which I think should be done. But there's another creator that I love on here named Professor Jiang. His YouTube channel is Predictive History. And so he did a whole video on death by bureaucracy and how most of the financial problems that are experienced within North America, especially, is because the bureaucracy has just reached such crazy levels where there are so many people making so much more than they deserve because of these kinds of things. But that's because the bureaucracy was established. I definitely recommend going to watch that. But personally, for me, I think that everyone should be able to survive. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think in my perfect world, I think that you and I, if we want to work way harder and we actually want to build shit, we should get compensated for that. And we should have more access to more resources. But in a first world country, I think it's freaking crazy that there's this many people who live in tents and are like addicted to drugs. And maybe they would use this money for drugs too. I don't know that. But like, at least give them an opportunity, because the more that you actually challenge the question of Like, why is someone poor? There's always so many reasons because there's a lot of this bureaucracy, like you talked about, to even get the stuff that you could access, right? So in Canada, especially, right? People will be like, oh, go get a job or you're a bum, like, go do this thing. And it's getting worse here as the economy gets worse. But if you actually think about it, like, there's a lot of things that you have to have access to even get access to these programs, right? Like, you need to have a certain level of understanding for how to navigate the system. You may need ID that is really
Exactly.
hard to access. Like, there's so many things that people don't think about because they're in a privileged position where they don't have to think about that. And so ideally, like you said, is that this could eliminate so much from cost perspective for the bureaucracy of running it. And if everyone could have access to it, then it also eliminates the people saying like, I don't have time to think. I don't have time to do anything but survive. Because for a lot of the world, with how bad the economy is, they're in a constant state of survival. So when you and I even want to try to have conversations about these subjects, we're going to get laughed or roasted because of just the level of ignorance, because you can't blame someone for not knowing something or expanding their mind when they're worried about what they're going to eat, right? And there's a lot of people in that position, way more people than we like to realize, but in the first world country, it's still a major issue.
I want to paint a picture of this because I'm actually having to go through some of this right now, as far as like the bureaucracy and like how it can create an issue. Now, listen, I'm saying this because I'm in such a privileged position and it's still an issue
Yes.
where I need to get a driver's license where I'm at. And I went into the DMV. I looked online. I looked at all the documents I needed. I got most of my documents. All right. I got everything that I could possibly gather. I got. And I go up there and I need to have a proof of my citizenship. I need to have proof of some sort of tax residency, whatever. And then also two forms of that I live in the place that I live in. Now, I gave this guy two different statements from my bank. And he was like, oh, I can only take one of them. I'm like, but this is two proofs of me living where I live. Nope, I can only take one bank statement. Okay, gotcha. Essentially, this is what it came down to. The things that were on the list that were things that I could use, like I didn't have. Like I simply don't. I cannot go and get this info. Like there, I don't have it. I don't have an employer, so there's no employer that can be like, oh,
Mm.
I need you to. I can vouch for you on this. Like no. And there's all these other things. I'm like, dude, like I don't have these things. So what are we going to do about this? And there's some workaround, right, that I have to figure out. But it's just like if it's hard for me to like prove that I'm a resident, like how hard would it be for other people who basically like the thing that was in my head that I realized was that you needed to spend money in order to get these other things, to get a utility bill or whatever types of thing. Like you had to be spending money to get this information. So I'm like, oh, that's very fascinating. If you're not spending money or making money, right? If you're not paying taxes or whatever, then you can't prove your residency and these things of that nature. So, anyways, I just wanted to point that out because I'm really going through it myself, and I'm like, that's a real thing.
Yeah, and I love that you said that if it's even hard for you, like how think of other people's situations where say maybe they don't know the language, they don't know the system. Like there's so much that you need to know, and that comes from the bureaucracy. I can't speak to the financial situation or like signing up for this stuff in the States. I think it's a little easier in Canada, to be honest. Like it's definitely still harder than it should be. But one thing that's massive here is our healthcare system. It's kind of the same sort of deal. And the bureaucracy there, because ours was done by the state, right? We have state funded healthcare. And so because of that, the bureaucracy in those establishments have become so insane that to get access to healthcare here is just such a pain. And I had to basically learn an entire new system. And luckily, I'm someone who can navigate technology pretty well. I know how to research things and I'm fairly creative in terms of how to navigate a system. And so even though our system is absolute shit, I was able to like it's great that if you have no money, I love that people can get access to healthcare, but to actually use it is like a mission. Like I had to basically hack the system to get access to doctors. And then even when I got access to the right person, I would be on a waiting list for like 6 months. And a lot of it is because of this bureaucracy. Other part of it is because we lose our best talent to you guys, typically from our doctors, because y'all pay them way more, which is, hey, it's how it goes. But it's crazy how many things there are and how like, yes, it's a pain in the ass that you went there and you're like, oh, this is crazy. But like some people don't even have a bank account or like there's so many things they have to figure
Right.
out to even get the chance to get off the streets or to get off of out of their situation, which is so unfair, right? Where I think something that like UBI, if done correctly, could hopefully raise the floor and give a lot more people a chance. Because it's very evident that when you see a lot of people in really bad situations, like they're so far removed from going to the DMV. Like there's so many steps that have to happen before that to where they could even realize that that's something that they need to do.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about this out loud. Like UBI is one thing, the income itself. And then like RD, you pointed out, wouldn't we need to have healthcare first for this to work?
Mm,
I think that's an interesting thought. And the reason I went back to that is because my head was also education, right? Like Like, technically in the US, we have a nice amount of like universal basic education, I guess. It's pretty bad, but that's not necessarily unexpected. I think that if you had the UBI, maybe some of that could be going towards healthcare services, right? And this goes into the stablecoin CBDC discussion that we had a little bit too, where it's like the UBI could also be programmatic. And I mean, this is what I believe is going to happen in our lifetime is that we're going to have, once we get this UBI, if it's being distributed through the government, that is, there will be some like constraints on what you can do with that money. And maybe one of the things is that you get a certain allowance, right, just for healthcare alone, or you can even be automatically debited or credited for healthcare expenses right on the spot for things that you need if you had free healthcare, correct? But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different laws for sure that would have to be in place for this stuff to really work, at least if it's coming from the government. Now, the other side of this is does UBI actually need to come from governments or could it actually come from private actors as well? And this is something that Sam Altman brought up in his discussion with Theo Vaughn, which is funny to say out loud. But they had a really good podcast a couple of months ago now. And I actually covered this on my channel where we talked about like what Sam Altman outlined was a world where AI tokens, which are units of text essentially, right, that you input into the AI. The AI, large language models, they take the units that you put into it, like say each character of a word, right, represents a token, imagine inside of AI. But more specifically, the meaning behind each piece of speech is a token. And so what Sam Altman pointed out is what if we had a system where all of the tokens that were in existence were essentially distributed throughout the world. And these tokens also had values that could move up and down. And so if all of the AI companies came together to distribute all of the AI tokens in a sense, or at least the credits to the AI tokens, and then these credits had the ability to, once again, go up and down with market value and demand as you have demand for these different tokens and they have more use as well, then you could have a system where everyone is participating in the upside of what's coming with AI and technology and potentially all of the economy if all of the economy ends up being based upon like these AI tokens, which I think that's probably the most significant thing that is probably going to happen. It's like all of the value, it's like right now it's data centers, right? Like a lot of most of probably the world's value is in these data centers. And so what you could have now is just like credits to those data centers that are being traded, right? But instead, he's saying that it'll end up being like the AI tokens that are actually doing something with all of that data that you can then have be the currency unit of the system of the future. So, anyways, imagine that it was from the private actors where we also got this UBI from.
Yeah, and you can get very creative, especially as systems are completely changing. We can redefine how things navigate within them. But I do think that if they don't do something like this soon, things could get really crazy really quickly, right? And there's got to be a reallocation or redistribution of the funds within the system because it's in the hands of so few that, like, yes, it's fine in theory economically if 10%. And I actually saw this stat. This was crazy to me, Keith. And I double checked this because I heard it from a podcast and I'm not sure if it's right, but I wrote it down because I found it so staggering that, let me find it here. It was that something like the top 10% of, yeah, here it is. The top 10% of income earners own 92% of US equities. That's insane.
That's crazy.
Like that is so absolutely absurd. And that clearly right there reflects the tiers of lives that people have. And because they get so deep into the echo chamber that they're involved in, the empathy across the board is so low because people can only think that their experience is as close to a universal experience as possible because people typically hang out with the same level of income as them for the most part. They see similar content, they share similar things because it makes it feel good that we all have the same opinion. And so that just shows you how crazy things are. And if there's not some sort of redistribution of the funds, either through something like UBI or if the government can't force more effective tax strategy on these companies that make so much money and then somehow find a way to redistribute to everyone else, like there's going to be riots
Yes.
because go ahead.
Well, so here's the thing that's been coming up in my circle lately is like in the United States, we're also seeing these hotspots of where like the energy costs are rising drastically
Crazy. Yeah.
because of AI and because local governments and the federal government is giving grants to these companies and asking them to move in and you know, take up the grid. But the thing I'm talking about, like people are talking about reporting power bills upwards of like $800.
For a month.
Yeah. And like in the United States, that's probably 4 times like what you'd be looking to pay in the winter. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
when you're like using a lot of electricity and stuff, like that is going to be massive if the energy price, right? The basic needs to live, right? Start going up 4x, 10x. Like that's
We
going to
got
cause an issue.
there's nowhere else to be squeezed. Like we've been
Exactly.
squeezed everywhere, man. It's like, hey, and no one understands this. When I talk about this shit with my parents, my grandparents, I was actually talking with them in a how like in Canada in particular, basically you will win the election if you have the most certain way that you'll maintain housing prices here because like all the money is conducted by that, and so these people all follow a similar ideology and they don't even realize where it's coming from. It's like scarcity driving the car, and so they don't even think beyond that because they're old and they're on a limited amount of money, right? And so they're like, I need to secure my asset, my my property is my retirement. They all think like this. And so collectively, they don't even realize it, but they're saying like screw you to the next generation essentially because we can't even start. Like all the perks that they had, all the benefits and the advantages they had, they just don't exist anymore. And you can't expect people to let go of the security that they have if they don't have a safety net too, right? Like you've got to give us some sort of way to play the same game that you guys got to play. And so people have to make these decisions. I'm really hopeful that crypto can like play and blockchain can play a role in this shit because the tech is actually here. That's what's hard
Hmm.
for people to grasp
Hmm.
is that the problems that we're talking about, like we actually have tools to solve them and even to take bad actors out of the equation if you understand how the system is being built from the beginning. Like that's why a recurring character we talk about the show a lot, Charles Hoskinson, why he's so like he's so passionate when he talks is because he actually knows he has the solution to your problems,
Hmm.
right? It's just, can I actually get to the place where I need to go, where I can actually do this right? And so that's why when people are having to have conversations like this, but people are very desperate, dude. And a desperate human is like a cat backed into a corner. You can only get so close before it swats at your face. And that's getting like, that's increasingly popping up everywhere because even if you're, and this is also too, I think about this too, or if you're really rich, like, yeah, cool, you and your friends are all super good, but like eventually that's it's not going to be enough to be in the nicest apartment and like think your life is normal. Like everything's going to become such a shit show. Like even if you are rich, you should want some sort of way to redistribute wealth so that like there's not this crazy level of divide. I even think, like I said in the beginning, that if you're doing more, you're providing more value, you're working harder, you should have an objectively better life. But if everyone below you is just barely surviving, that's not a system that I want to be part of. Even if I'm winning in it, that sounds fucked up to me.
Yeah, and what RD said here, it is a real problem, and it's not getting any better. Throughout history, the way that it always goes down is that you get to the point to where people have had enough, and like you said,
I
they
think
will
we're close.
riot, they will go out in the streets. I mean, we've even seen like flares of this in the United States, 2020. Like, what happens when you shut down someone's livelihood, right? Like, well, they don't have anything to do other than go and protest and cause issues.
You have to have hard conversations when you have a hard topic to talk about like this that's interweaving into everything, whatever you want to say it. Like it's part of it, touches everything.
Hmm.
And when you think of the mental health epidemic too, especially with men, like the rates of suicide and depression are just so staggering amongst men because in every bit of media we're basically told that if you're not economically successful as a man, you're a loser, right? You've made it almost impossible for me to start from nothing and become economically successful, like almost impossible. The amount of risk that I have taken on as an entrepreneur and the amount of work that I do to have the limited resources that I have is so messed up. Like, if you're a normal dude in today's day and age, you are so unbelievably cooked because like they don't give you a chance. And then guys pull back because they're like, every girl just wants a rich guy. And so since now the dating scene is also a global one through social media, go ahead, you got a point?
No, dude, that you keep going.
Yeah, so because like the whole interweaving, like this shit matters so much, and you've said this too. It's a really good point, but I love that when I talk to you, Keith, I know what you're saying through the tiny bit that you're saying. But a lot of times that people are watching this, like we need to do a better job of giving them more context that brought to that thing. Because I know I know the thought models that brought you to the point you're about to make, but we need to do a better job explaining it. So I'm trying to do that here with this, right? Okay, the economy is yes, okay, we can say, oh, work harder, work harder, work harder. But think about how this impacts everything. If the pretty girl in their local town today, like if they start going on social media, very quickly, they start getting inundated with things that are too good to say no to, right? So now this income problem, this income inequality doesn't just create a finance problem, it creates a well-being problem across the board. Because now if I'm in a smaller town and I'm even like upper moderately successful, and I lived through this. So I was dating a girl for like 3.5 years on and off. And she loved the fact that I was like the entrepreneur in our city. I was the kid who was hustling, doing it. I was doing objectively really well. And I even let that kind of go to my head. I'm like, who's she going to leave me for? Like, I'm the man, right? I was, I was an ignorant idiot, but I was the big fish in the small pond, right? With the internet, only big fishes in big ponds really win because we were together for a long period of time. I was going through a rough patch health wise. And then turns up she's dating some multimillionaire across the country and she flew out to see him, right? That's the kind of shit that actually happens. Like when you're on this side, like people look at me and they'd be like, oh, like, why are you bitching? You've won this thing. And I'm like, brother, there's like tiers to this stuff. And only a small amount of people are actually liking life right now. Like everyone's life is so much harder than it should be. And we got to hold the people accountable who created this fucking mess because their lives are pretty good. Right, like one thing I want you to take over. Like the final point to interconnect with this is that like the incentive structures are so messed up, and people who aren't privy enough to enough information are making decisions that screw even more people. Like in Canada in particular, this one guy did like a request for how many properties the average politician owned, and they owned like multiple homes. And so it's like, how in the world can we have the people making decisions on markets like this that are so clearly biased? How could they not be? And so it's just like we need to get educated and we need to demand stuff that is needed. And the only way we do that is if we get pissed and you get educated. Sorry, rant over. Go ahead.
Are those people who own multiple homes representing the population, right?
No, like, no, they're not. Like, that's not the average Canadian experience. Like, unless you have a parent who bought you a home, or unless someone like died and they left you a home, you can't get in because your housing market's gotten crazy too, man. But in Canada, our shit is so screwed. Like it is the biggest bubble I've ever seen in my entire life. And because they so effectively brainwashed us to keep us happy and spending during the last housing crisis that you guys experienced, that we dodged because of some financial shit behind the scenes to prop up the housing market, it's created this like contagion of greed where these people just over leverage themselves and get more and more properties. And that's starting to pop. And now these people are going onto the local news stations and being like, I got screwed by going and spending a down payment on a house that I never wanted, that wasn't designed for anyone to actually fucking live in it. And they're crying that they lost. Fuck you. Are you kidding me? You're the greediest motherfucker here and you're crying that you lost. You are in a casino that you didn't even let us get into and you lost and you're crying. Like it's crazy. And these stories are popping up all over the place because there's
Interesting.
so many condo builds all over Toronto that were built, but they're called dog crate condos was what they get called. And so they were only designed for investors in mind. So they're concerned with doors, bedrooms, not livability. So these things are dog shit. And these people paid crazy market rates for them. No one wants to live in them and we can't even afford it if we did. So it's about to come
Wow.
tumbling down.
Wow. Very interesting. I've definitely been hearing about the Canadian housing market over the past, I guess, like 5+ years. Yes, ever since the 2020 time happened, it was a really big topic. So it's interesting to hear that what's the saying? It's like the chickens coming to roost. What is it?
Yeah, yeah. And there's one guy who I was watching yesterday. I can't remember his name, so I wish I could give him credit, but I can't. He basically said that whenever a government intervenes and fights a natural market, it is usually just like putting a band-aid on a massive gaping hole in a boat. Like it may hold temporarily, but that water's going to come in. And he said the time frame is usually about, give or take a few years, 20-year delay. And so if you're looking at the Canadian housing market when it was propped up, we're getting real close to that 20 years where you're about to start feeling the pain if they don't come up with something very clever here in the very near future.
Yeah, man. And I actually want to get back to some of the things that you were saying earlier around how the economic issues create social issues.
So deeply.
Yes. So this is one of the things that I have been thinking about and looking at as much as I can. The past 2020-ish, we had this huge rise in what people call the red pill movement, right?
Yes.
Where men are upset with women and women are the reason for their issues, and or at least to some degree they should be treating women differently based upon where they're at in their life and so on and so forth. And this is blown up. I mean, you've got people who have become these massive influencers preaching some sort of like, it's not always like misogynistic, but it is definitely tapping into the fact that men are desperate and feeling like they don't have any options. And it's led to an entire economy around that kind of stuff. And I won't point out, I guess, super specific people, but like there's one podcast that has like over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and they do these live chats. And their whole thing is to like bring people who represent the most extreme
Yeah.
versions
I know what
of
you're
what they're
talking about.
talking about and coming there and just roasting these people and just like
It's
coming
rage
at
bait.
it's rage bait. it makes people think that that's what's really going on in the world when in reality, it's really not. And I'll give it up because I lived there too. I lived in what was called the OnlyFans capital of the world in Miami.
Miami.
And that is where they are. So yeah, they can go out there and find these people and like show what they're like, but they're taking these like
Extremes.
juvenile people as well
Yes.
and like putting them up on the stage and saying this is what's happening in America and then around the world. And it's like, guys, like no, it's
Yeah, those
not. It
and
is,
that's
but
the
it's not.
we've talked about this too. Perception creates reality, right? So even if the system isn't like that, if enough people believe that it is, it basically is, right? So that's the thing. And I will also say, like, it's become crazy that like men and women, especially in the dating culture, are like so divided. And I understand why. Like, it makes complete sense. But I will also say, like, no one's without fault here. We all should get educated and also zoom out a little bit and really become a lot more empathetic and worldly. But I will say, as someone who studies content for a living, I will say that whether this was by design, by the algorithms, or what, it has pushed like toxicity on both sides a lot. And I can say that a lot of like female content is targeting like money's the only thing that matters in men. Like, you need men, and that makes sense because the economy is so bad, right? That it's even more important than ever to have someone who's economically viable. But the problem is that's such a small amount of people. And so if you give like men who are like men, like, there's at the end of the day, we may be sophisticated, the Anunnaki may have messed with us a little bit, but we're still monkeys, man. Like, we have desires that we pursue. And so when you essentially give all the power to such as few men in a sexual marketplace, like, that's going to lead to bad outcomes because it just leads to people getting hurt. And then eventually they like it just screws with the psychology so much. So what I would say in this is that in the red pill movement, I'm glad that you brought that up. That's really like that's taken from the Matrix, where you have to choose between the two pills, and then do you want to wake up to the fact that you're in a simulation, whatever. And really, people should audit what they're watching. I love the whole feature that Instagram added in terms of what I can see what my friends liked, because I can know so much about their psychology so quickly by what they like. I can see like two or
Wait a
three
minute.
posts.
Wait a
Go
minute.
ahead.
Wait a minute. People can
You didn't
see
know
what I
that?
like.
You didn't know that?
No, when did that happen?
Are you trolling?
Oh no.
Okay. Yeah, bro. So if you have someone on Instagram and you're following each other, when you like something, there's now a pure feed of only shows you content that your friends have also liked.
Oh, no. That's good to know. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah. So as like a social psychologist, not psychologist, that's like giving myself way too good of a title. But I love studying people and the human behavior so much that when I'm able to watch this stuff, I'm able to know exactly the situation that people are going through within seconds. And so then that also tells me if I'm a human being and I'm an idiot and I'm capable of doing this, the data machine knows a thought that you have before you even had it. Because I'm able to make predictions that are like wildly accurate. Because what I'll do is if I know the person well enough, I'll basically reach out to them without saying why I'm reaching out to them, saying like, hey man, and like guess what the situation is. And I've been right, Keith, like 9 times out of 10. And so if my dumbass brain is doing this, you don't think these algorithms can do this every single time? So like, get off social media. We need new social media apps and audit your own consumption because this shit is so powerful. The average person can't grasp the level of influence that is had when this thing is in your pocket and it's like following you 24/7. That's why it literally knows thoughts before you have them.
Knows your thoughts.
Literally.
It knows that
It's
you've
like
been thinking
Santa.
about them.
It sees you when you're sleeping, man. It knows when you're awake. But to get back to the UBI piece is that most of the problems that we talk about socially, so much of this stuff that's human behavior based, it's basically like when you take food away from an animal, you see its primal instincts come out, and that's the unfortunate reality that we're in. Is that the majority of the planet, even the people who are wealthy, are still operating from a place of scarcity or lack or worried about losing because they're seeing the size of people who aren't doing well grow and grow and grow. And so then the fear of being one of the people who's down here becomes even larger for them. So then they hold on to what they have even more. So it's a massive shit show that we need like massive change to create. And the UBI is one potential option. We should talk about automation too with this too. We got some. Go ahead.
I gotta come back a little bit to this because I just had this thought that was
Do
coming to
it.
me. It's like we've seen throughout all of this wealth inequality and whatnot, like we've seen how that leads to extremes being louder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like there's a double impact to this because it's like, yes, I'm hurting. So like someone talking to me about like why it is going to resonate, period. And then like the more extreme that someone feels about that, the more I might feel aligned with that because I'm dealing with this and it's making me emotional potentially. Now, with that comes the fact also that we have these social media platforms that are essentially designed to create this extremities as well. So we've got these extremities coming to the forefront and looking like it's normal. And we've got the fact that actually on the inside of this, I'm now incentivized to be as extreme as possible because not only am I poor, but that's a way to make money. And so now it becomes actually the only way for me to make money, potentially in my head might be extreme and to go out there and do the dancing thing or to show my body online or do whatever it is that's going to get people to pay attention to me because now that is the economy.
Social media guaranteed the destruction of our systems that we knew, because when something you consume often rewards anomalies, anomalies become the norm, right? From a perception standpoint. Of course, we know that that's not reality when we walk around for the most part, but our brain isn't good enough at distinguishing between the two. And so although we may be able to see something, our perception and our belief systems are that of the other. We're essentially going to create its reality. And I've seen this happen so often online. And I actually saw this guy talking about it on TikTok the other day. And I was like, that could actually be so easy to achieve. But he basically said that with the tool of social media, you can essentially create sleeper agents that don't even realize they're sleeper agents. So basically, what you can do is just turn on the juice when someone talks about a topic that you want them to continue talking about, and only leave the juice on in terms of views when they're talking about that thing. Eventually, a year from now, they won't even realize that their entire identity was shaped by a feedback mechanism of an algorithm that shaped them into who they completely are because they attached it to their income and their status, which is the natural wirings of what motivates a human. So that was something that I thought about more and more. I'm like, wow, that would be so unbelievably easy to execute. And the people who would have the money and the understanding to build these systems in the first place, like, of course they would do stuff like that, right? And it'd be so easy to do that without people understanding because you're just inundated with so much stuff. That's the scariest thing about social media, right? Is that it's all changing you, but there's so much of it. It's hard to pinpoint what it was that made the extreme happen. It's almost impossible. And that's why I really advocate against short form content. Like, if I can say anything to you guys, it's safeguard yourself from short form content and safeguard your choice. Like, having conscious decision making over what you're watching is so important. And I saw this even last night. This was crazy, Keith. I'm glad this came up. I'm chatting back and forth discussing my next app concept for a business that I'll be making. And I'm asking ChatGPT, and it's going back and forth with me. And it's giving me three different options. So basically what they can do is just figure out, okay, who actually knows this shit, right? And then we're training the model how to think. Because if they deem that, like, I'm smart or you're smart on a specific subject, they don't even need to know the subject material, which is what I talked about before, right? Currently it's trained on it's trained on like basic level shit, because most of the stuff on the internet, it's not expert based. But you and I as the expert are talking to it, right? Which is even scarier because I'm teaching it my decision making models. Because when it gives me this full answer and then it gives me three other options next, they were one or two of them were always like too good where I almost couldn't find myself stopping. And so eventually, when I came to that conclusion where I'm like, this is totally what's happening in the background, I stopped and I was like, I don't want to give it anymore. And they'll get it from somewhere else, but I was like, yo, I got to get away from this because I'm literally teaching this thing exactly how I think. And that is terrifying
Mm,
because if you can teach the thinking models, you don't even need the subject matter because it can interpret all of it and then get to that place eventually. Because that's really all that I did, right? Was that I watched enough of enough to determine between garbage and good. And I just would keep going down the good, making connections from all these different fields, which is, I'm sure, exactly what this is going to do eventually, that's what was like, oh, we so cooked. When I saw that, I was like, because I know the average person, the problem is, again, the incentive structure where even though I could be totally off base. I don't understand the interweavings of LLMs enough to be saying this with too much conviction. So definitely fact check everything I'm saying. But it's not that far fetched to see that this could be how it would work. And the payoffs or potential payoffs are just too good for most people to not use it. Like we've talked about before, the AI is just too good. And there's gonna be like a gap of people who are like AI users and then like everybody else because it supercharges you as a human, man.
yeah, no doubt about it. And oh man, there's so much more on like where the AI actually ends up getting. And you've talked about this before. And I've also was listening to one of your clients yesterday or 2 days ago, and like this idea that the innovations that happen from all of this get to the point to where it's so fast to where the argument is, are we already in the singularity of
Mm,
like eventually time essentially will compress to where like breakthroughs are happening at all times. And so like the only thing that will matter is whether or not the information is getting to you, are you like hearing about the things that have now changed. And so, anyways, that's kind of where my mind just went with all of that. Is because like the technology also because technically that is already happening. Like there are so many innovations that are happening with AI that we don't know about.
Totally.
And eventually, yeah, it'll be like that at all times. Like just like crazy innovations and new tools and new breakthroughs. And like if you just happen to know, then you know. If you don't, you don't.
Y Yeah, man, the gap between informed and uninformed, and did you have a thought? I want you to
Yeah.
finish. Did you
No,
have a
no.
okay, is gonna become so crazy. It was already like this. Like, when I was learning all this stuff, like, I know so much stuff that my dad would have never had the opportunity to learn because he didn't have access to the information, right? And I was young enough, ignorant enough to believe that I could learn whatever I need through the internet, and so I did it. And everybody that I told that I was doing this, they all just they all didn't believe what I was saying, and it was just enough friction for where they didn't try, right? AI has removed that friction so much that almost everyone who tries now will be successful if you're moderately intelligent. It is so much easier that, like, even if it is horrible, it's evil, it's going to work for too many people for them to stop using it because they also are constantly reminded of the alternative, right? Being broke, having no say, all of this stuff. It's insane. Like, we actually talked about this. I sent you a voice message in preparation for this episode where we'll talk about this episode in the future when it comes to AI slop. But you talked before about how gold is a self-regulating market because there's effort needed and time needed and resources needed to actually get the gold out of the ground. So it basically creates a natural market. The same was true on social media for content, right? So that's why it opened up this new frontier for the attention-based economy, which has ruled our entire world. And I saw this coming a little bit earlier than other people, so I'm like, I put all my chips in. I was like, let's go. This is so obvious. But it's now created a problem where, much like you said, where the example of, like, let's say Bezos goes up to the meteor, he pulls out some gold, brings back, we have unlimited gold. That changes the whole dynamics of that. The attention economy is ruling everything in the world as we know it. And if you don't understand media well enough, this won't truly hit for you, but it's impacting like everything, okay? Because everyone's watching social media in some way, shape, or form, and it's impacting how they think, operate, and how they navigate their world. Now, the whole proposition of like, okay, it takes effort, skill, and time to make YouTube videos or whatever it was, that's now gone away, theoretically, where now it becomes an absolute shit show of like, where does this go? I think things like technology and innovation is going to have to come into this space, but it's just scary to think about how what the oil of the new attention economy is like attention, right? And to get the attention, you used to have to either work really hard, have a lot of time, or resources and skills. That's dwindling by the day. And so it's going to make social media such a horrible place to be because it's just going to be sheerly marketers like myself who understand psychology better than actual creators. And it's going to make these platforms shit, I think, in the not too distant future. And either they're going to have to pivot or there's going to be a massive opportunity for new platforms that get creative with limiting that.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack with that, man. I think the first thing being like the slop everywhere. There's some data that's been done, and maybe we already talked about this. I'm pretty sure we did, to where like very significant amount of interaction and posting that's happening on the internet is already just like bots.
Yeah. It's like boss talking to boss talking to boss.
And so with that, it's like, if that's the case, if 60% is the number that I heard of all of the interaction online is bots, then the other 40% that's coming from human beings is probably reacting to the bots. And so this idea that you pointed out earlier that like this is shaping society, like at what point is the AI actually just society versus our own inputs?
Are we already there?
Are we already there?
Because the thing is, right, like, I've seen this firsthand because of my businesses and whatnot, but perception, like, legit creates reality, and when perception is purely derived from these platform that somebody is controlling, the controller of that controls reality. So, like, let me give you an example. I created this strategy for how to do something, okay? I put it out into the internet, and then everyone copied my strategy. There could have been other strategies, but because it was the one that's everyone saw on all of their fact-checking sources, right? So, like, there's tiers to this stuff. Most people will just see something and like either copy it right away or see it as truth or whatever. But even for the additional people that they think they're doing extra work, right? Where do they go to do extra work? They check like Reddit, they may check Instagram, they may check a few other sources. If you control those few other sources, there is no other option, right? Because most people won't do the work. And even the few that would do it. If they came to a discovery that was contrary to common belief, they wouldn't be able to defend it because the masses would say that's wrong. That's crazy to think about when you
Very
actually
crazy.
that's insane. And that's taking place right before us. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing it every day because I'm like, people don't understand how social media works. They don't understand human behavior. It's like, God, so that's why this show needs to exist. But do you have any points based on this tangent, or do you want to go back to the UBI stuff?
Let's talk to Camille real quick because he
Yeah, yeah.
did something interesting. So, what about this take? Right now, stupid content makes money because stupid people spend money on stupid products. But if stupid people will be replaced by AI, and let's say there isn't universal income, and then isn't stupid content gonna die?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it will happen. That's why I think that new platforms, I think there'll be a new wave of social media platforms over this next generation that find different and unique ways to make the content better, like it or whatever people want. And I'm sure you'll have different options to get different things. Go ahead, Keith.
I wasn't getting it at first, but now I do get it because he's saying that the stupid people won't have money.
Yes.
So if stupid people don't have money, then products won't be marketed to the stupid people. I mean, intelligence, if we want to use that word, is on a bell curve,
Yes.
right? So if you move the bell curve, which is really all that would happen, essentially, really, like there's always going to be people that are more intelligent than others. You're not going to eliminate stupid people. People are just going to be in a different part of the curve.
That's a really good thought. But I already continue on, Keith.
No, I think that's kind of it. That's kind of how I would look at that. And she
Is
said,
the ultimate job of a bot to get you to spend money? That comes down to like that's actually a very profound question, right? Because if it's made by humans, then you're asking like, what is our primary motivator, right? If we're shaping this thing, then it comes down to it's kind of like looking in the mirror. Like, why do we get up? Why do we do what we do, right? And then that makes you ask a lot more questions off of that. But it's for automation in general. Like, I think a lot of people are very afraid of this. Looks like you got a good thought, Keith.
I think that's a good thought. I mean, when we think about the social media algorithms, like, yes, that is what they are designed to do, is to get people to spend money.
Totally. And you can, if you know how social media platforms work with not that much money, you can basically create a small reality that then rewards you very well economically. I've done it. I've done it dozens of times, like literally all the time. And I always, because I understand the significance of what I'm able to do, I really try to only partner with people that I believe in because like if I, if I had different intentions, I could have made way more money over my life. And because I saw what this was and how the mind can move pretty quickly if you just add some friction from it going a certain way. So Camille's got another one here. Let's see what they say. Where I'm getting at is right now you can be a lazy guy that doesn't like to learn and just swipe floors. But with robots and stuff, you won't be needed. Those skills won't be needed. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, they definitely that this perfectly brings us back to the whole topic of automation. So automation is a thing, and I actually was having a conversation with my buddy who's a welder 2 nights ago while I was kicking his ass in Smash Brothers, and and he's like, You're cooked, Ben," because I'm a knowledge based professional, right? And I said unequivocally, "Yes, I am cooked. I think I'll do enough to accumulate enough resources that during this awkward period I'll be fine." But totally, I'm like, everyone's cooked. I'm like, you're cooked too. He's like, there's no way a robot can do welding. And I'm like, I guarantee you a robot can do welding like 1000%. I said, like, I'd put the over under on a welding bot within the next 5 years that is like orders of magnitude better than you. And so you have to start asking these questions, right? Where we're gonna have to redefine how we value ourselves. I think this is gonna impact men in particular because like a lot of us have been productivity machines, and that's how we found love. That's how we got respect. And if that all goes away and there's nothing we can do, like that changes the social dynamics a ton. But automation in particular, like Andrew Yang gave this example too, so I'll steal it from him, where he said we're not very far removed from major truckers, like in trucking industry, being able to be done by fully self-driving trucks. Okay. And then you're like, okay, well, that's just the truckers. The truckers make a ton of money, but the truckers also support an invisible ecosystem to you and I that is propping up everything else, right? And the whole system is a house of cards. It only takes one thing to fall over for the whole thing to come toppling down. So let's run through the ecosystem and the economy that is sustained by truckers, right? The truckers have truck stops. The truckers have gas stations. The trucker have all these things that they go to along the way that cease to exist. And then when you think about what else falls, if that falls, it's a very slippery slope where the world is almost unrecognizable in a very short amount of time because we're already also pushed up against the wall and strapped as is. Like we talked about before, why a crash of the S&P 500 would be so effective is because the impact that it would have on everything else, people would have to sell. They wouldn't have a choice.
Mm.
They wouldn't be able to weather the storm. And so if everyone's in that position, this can fall and change so fast because they don't have the time to even like adapt. and roll with a new system, they would just fall. And that's how anarchy can set in, man.
Anarchy 2027.
2027. There is a, I think it's 2026, Project 2026. There's this guy who predicted that there would be a alien invasion in 2026, I think that it was. So maybe he's right, 2026 alien invasion. One of the guys that says he talks to aliens and stuff. So definitely do your own research here. But he's been on a lot of major shows, and he basically said that in 2026 there's going to be, I believe it was 2026, or this alien's going to come. But people also think that the whole alien thing is really just a very long psyop to be
Mhm.
used for something like this too. So who knows? Robots are already welding. Okay, already. Well, I'll have to let my buddy know. The Anunnaki's coming to get the gold. Honestly, yeah, it's like the debt man, right? It's like the tax man. He's coming to get his money.
Yeah. Aliens thing.
Hit me with it, bro. I've seen like every alien documentary. I've read a bunch of books. I've read some freaking weird books on the subject too. So like I'm in the top 10 to 20% of people in terms of alien knowledge too. I just found it fascinating. Like it's probably all horseshit, but it's really funny and entertaining.
RD says, he, aliens are us from the future.
That's a compelling theory that's actually thrown around quite a bit, because if you think about the evolution of human beings, like let's say we did have more say in terms of how our genetics evolve. If you're from a utilitarian perspective, you probably would end up like the Greys, which is a form of alien.
Oh, okay. Yes, see, I don't
Yeah,
know the
that's the level of
terminology.
depth that I am a nerd. So let me pull over a tab here.
So there's different like
Oh, buddy. Okay, let me give you a lesson on aliens. Okay, okay. And so, in like a legitimate place of discussion, where maybe he wasn't under oath, I don't know for sure, but somebody very deeply involved in the U.S. government came out and basically said that there's multiple species interacting with us. There are the Greys, which are these small little humanoid things. There's the small and the tall Greys. So the small ones are these guys, your classic alien, right? The thing that you know from Roswell, New Mexico, and a bunch of other sightings that have reported basically seeing this exact same thing. Small, humanoid looking thing, a big head, big eyes, no ears. Okay. That's the gray. There's the small gray and the tall gray. There's also the Nordics. So this is crazy. So the Nordics, no, come on, give me the aliens.
I'm like, the Nordics are aliens.
No, but okay, here, stick with me. So like, these people are apparently the ones that are the most, I guess people's an inappropriate word. The Nordics, and this is mostly like fan fiction, but like these are what people say, right? Some people argue that this is real, and some actually like fairly credible people have said they've had experiences with the Greys, whatever. But these species that they communicate mostly telepathically, they basically look like Nordic people. That's why they're called that. Apparently, they're like jacked to the gills. They're like perfect specimens of muscle and no body fat. That's the Nordics. There's also the reptilians. Let me hit you with this, and then I'll stop it here because I know this is too much for Keith, man. The reptilians are like they look a lot more like reptiles, as the name would suggest, and so this is a classification of extraterrestrial life that either from, because if you think about this, right, like some people think this makes sense is because like during the time of the dinosaurs, right, there was like why would it be impossible for there to be one dinosaur species that was so much greater in terms of intelligence than all of the others? We have that today with humans, right? And so some people believe that either in our timeline or a different timeline, different universe, whatever, that the most advanced species was a reptilian and they come in and interact with us. And so like this is funny because apparently like that's the fight that's going on, is that all of these different reptilians are part of like the Intergalactic Federation, man. I talked about that before. They're coming for your gold.
Exactly. As my friend Tyler Hill says on all his live streams, he has a waiting screen that says, "No lizard people allowed."